Welcome to the newest episode of Sports Talk Central. I'm your host, Adit Mahmood, with my normal co-host, Hunter. And today we're going to be talking about some Virginia Tech and some college football, some NFL news over the last 3 weeks, and then talking about the MLB playoffs right now. So Virginia Tech had their bye week this week, but the last 2 weeks they went 1-1. We can talk about whether 1-1 is their record or not, but beat Stanford, lost to Miami. I thought their offense looked good. I mean, they've been having multiple good drives, which is what we've been asking for. They've had moments where the defense is giving up a lot of points and the offense is kind of slowing down. I'm not a fan of that part, but especially the Stanford game, it seemed like they did know how to pick up the pace in that fourth quarter, because that Stanford game got a little close, and then they got a couple of nice plays, and they were able to close it out. But what have you seen from them over the last couple of games?
Like they're getting back to the offense that we saw last year, right? They're not overthinking it, on those early downs. And they're not having as many negative plays. The ball is always going forward. At least that's what I've noticed these last couple of games. And Tyler Bowen, he's been in his bag. They're committing again to the run game. Like, this is a run first team that opens up the pass. You have one of the best running backs in the conference in Bashal Tutin. You're using him more. I mean, he should be getting probably at least 20 touches every game. I mean, with how good he is in the passing game as well. But you're using him a bit more. I understand you have a lot of mouths to feed wide receivers wise, but you're using Tutin more. That's the biggest thing. Secondly,
Jalen Lane is being used more. Jalen Lane is being used effectively.
Quan Felton was being used more against Stanford. I know Ollie Jennings hasn't been used as much. He's also been a bit banged up this season, but you're starting to see Drones be more comfortable as a passer. He's not, at least yet, a full great pocket passer. If you get him on the move, that's where I think, can really hurt you in the passing game. And Tyler Bowen is starting to get back to that a little bit. It's no coincidence that when A, you get your run game going with Tutin, and B, that opens up the pass with Jones being able to roll out, hit some plays out there, your offense is starting to hum a bit more. And this is the offense that we saw after the first 4 games of last year, where they changed some of the scheme, and then they started crushing teams when they would play them that were either below them in competition or like around their level. Obviously, they got blown out by a couple teams later in the season that had more talent and were just better coached, but you still saw them make adjustments. You're seeing that right now as well. And who knows if that's going to, continue in the second half here, but they have 2 very winnable games coming up here, especially at home. And honestly, 4 of their last 6 games are at Lane Stadium. With how great they usually play at Lane, they played very well at Lane last year. I believe they only lost 2 games at home last year. It was the Purdue game and it was the NC State game they lost. They went 4-2 at home at Lane last year. With all these games you have left at Lane, a bowl berth is very in reach here, especially these next 2 weeks. You have Boston College, who just lost to Virginia. You have Georgia Tech, who is definitely better this year, but I still think that's a winnable game for Virginia Tech. Then you have Syracuse, which always plays tough up in the Dome. But if you're able to win these next 3 games with the adjustments you've made on offense, you're all of a sudden 6-3 heading into that massive game against Clemson. And if I had to guess, you win these next 3, that's going to be a night game against Clemson. And Clemson's probably still going to be a top 10 team in the country overall. I don't think they'll get game day VT, that is, but I think they'll definitely be featured on ESPN, ABC for that game, and people will get to see Lane Stadium get riled up for another night game. So, but that's obviously about a month away. They got to worry about one game at a time. But I like the adjustments they've made back on offense. Defensively, they still need to come up with some more stops. I like Caleb Spencer's game a lot. He's turning into quite a player on defense. I still want to see more from Lawson as well. You're getting the contributions from APR. Peebles is starting to wake up a little bit more. Dorian Strong, not many teams are throwing in his direction. Delane has really bounced back after that Vanderbilt loss. And honestly, D, I don't think that Vanderbilt loss looks too bad right now. Vandy's now 4-2 this year, and then they beat Alabama. They just beat Kentucky yesterday too. They're going to be a tough out. And I believe they actually play, is it Texas? I think they play Texas coming up here soon too. So that's going to be another tough game for them. But I'm just glad that they're making these adjustments. It should not have taken this long to make the adjustments, but I see them going in the right direction overall.
Yeah, and so you can go back to the Vanderbilt game. I mean, look, one of the things about when you look at the losses from Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt, it was you could really cycle that down to they had 12 men on the field on that missed field goal.
And they just didn't show up for a whole half.
Yeah, but if you take away that penalty, that game never goes into overtime.
Yeah.
So that again, they beat themselves into that game. The Purdue game, they kind of
Rutgers.
Rutgers. Some of these conference games, I get confused a little bit. But yeah, Rutgers, that game, that was, I forgot, I don't know how they lost that one. And obviously the Miami game, if the ref knew and it's like, here's my take on that whole call, right? It's a 50-50 call, okay? So we can make the argument that you can make the initial call whether it was a catch or not a catch. But once you make the call and once it's in review, you need to have indisputable evidence. And what that means is it's not just whether it's a 50-50 catch. It's whether there is indisputable evidence to make it 75-25. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. There's nothing about that play that would have suggested 75-25. Now, so what I'll say is this. If they didn't call that a catch originally, I understand. If they called it a catch or didn't call it a catch originally, I completely understand. It's just that once you have the initial call and then you put it in review, the indisputable evidence becomes a factor. And so that now the margin of error has to be different. So it just felt like they were robbed of that win. And look, they could be 2-0 in the ACC right now. They could have a better record, 4-2. Like, they could have a better record. So it is kind of an issue there. But
my take on that is I agree with you, Adit. If you call that a catch on the field, which they did, and honestly, I don't know how they did because it's such a weird angle. How do you have enough evidence to overturn it after looking at a replay for over 5 minutes? Seriously, you don't. You don't. And I think they made a judgment call, and that was that. I'm not going to, buy into the conspiracies here on the show, but I think based on everything I saw, there was nothing to overturn that call. Just like it would be the same, Adit, if you called it incomplete and reviewed it,
right,
you keep the call.
Yeah.
There is no need to reverse that. So, I don't know. It definitely still stings.
It's like the Isaiah Likely thing. It's like, all right, hey, he caught you. If the initial call was he caught the ball, right? But when you saw the review, it was very clear that he had part of his toe out of bounds.
Yes.
That was a very clear reversal. That makes sense. So now let's talk about the rest of college football. Obviously, the Ohio State game, I don't understand why. He was in field goal range. I would rather lose from a missed field goal than when just sliding was like without knowing how much time was left. That's the
just
first,
throw the ball away, right? Like literally just throw it away. I know you have to attempt, what would that be, like a 55, 58-yard kick. I would rather lose that way than whatever the heck Will Howard did there.
Yeah, and then also you had Texas beat Oklahoma. Like Texas has been good. Alabama, I don't know what's happened to them recently. I mean, the Vanderbilt game, the South Carolina, like there was a Beamer Ball special with the recovering the onside kick. Look, and they had a chance to win that game. They had a chance to win that game. Yep. If the Alabama player doesn't get the interception, and maybe with better play calling, they're in field goal range there. I understand South Carolina. I think their field goal kicker may have missed one, but it's been an interesting college football. I mean, very clearly Texas looks like the best team right now.
Yes, Texas looks like the top team in the country. I mean, after that first quarter yesterday, they scored 34 unanswered points and just dominated Oklahoma. I mean, that game was not close after the first quarter. And Texas, they have a big test next week. Georgia, that's going to be a really fun game. I'm going to take Texas to win it, but it's still going to be close. I think right now, if you were to give me a national title favorite, I would go Texas just with the way they're playing. But you also have a big game as well in the SEC next week, indeed, and that is Alabama at Tennessee. They go to Knoxville. That is also a monstrous game for both teams, considering that both are fighting to A, win the SEC, and B, get into the playoff. I think the loser of that game will be very much up a creek for both their title hopes for the SEC and making the playoffs. So that is a monstrous game as well next week. And yeah, but great day for college football overall yesterday.
Oh yeah, and it was great. Like, it was last week was great for upsets because wow, there were a lot of upsets there. All right, let's just talk NFL. Obviously, week 6 has not been completed, but last few weeks, I mean, some of the takeaways we have so far for me, the Commanders look like the team to beat in the NFC East. If Jaden Daniels can stay healthy, they actually may have a good long-term plan. Now, to me, that tells me Cliff Kingsbury. I'm not saying that he will get a head coaching opportunity somewhere, but the odds of him doing it have increased. Have actually increased exponentially. The Lions don't look. The Lions have kind of been a disappointment considering what they were doing last year. The Cowboys are kind of in a weird situation. What are your takeaways? Like, what teams have surprised you? What teams have disappointed you within the first 6 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, the Commanders have been great. And Jaden Daniels, it looks like the Commanders have finally found their next franchise quarterback. And you know what? I'm happy for their fans. It's been a very rough ride for the last decade plus for Commanders fans, probably even longer than that, to be honest, man. So I'm really happy that they found a stud. And I didn't expect them to, start out the season this good. They have a chance to make the playoffs the way they're going right now. And Adit, I know they're playing the Ravens today. It looks like the Ravens have that game in hand as of right now.
Yeah, it's second and goal. They're up 17-13 third quarter.
Second and goal for the Ravens.
Yeah.
Okay, so they might go up 2 scores here. So, but it's still been a fun game. But Daniels has been awesome, but he's also been great all year. The Chiefs, it is so funny watching them get by with Travis Kelce, who I don't want to call him a corpse. That's mean, but he's not nearly as good as he used to be. B, no wide receivers. C, an okay offensive line. D, their starting running back's not healthy. But you know what, D? None of that matters when you have God as your quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is still very much that dude. And even though their weapons this year are still not that great, I know they're battling some injuries, this still looks like the team to beat in the NFL. It's crazy. But
actually, they didn't have Worthy.
Yeah, it's nuts. And
well, maybe Coleman. It might have been Coleman. It might have been someone else.
Yeah. I was watching the Eagles-Browns game today. The Eagles looked like they had that game under control, and then the Browns get a field goal. Then they block a field goal thanks to Myles Garrett. And I was watching just for the Browns offense. Deshaun Watson just looks cooked. It's been really bad to watch. If they do end up losing this game, I don't know how much longer Stefanski can keep trotting him out there and just lying to the fan base. Again, it's still in the second half at this point, and the game is pretty close. But, just with the way they've started, just not really sure how that's going to go down. The 49ers have finally woke up. That was a nice win for them on Thursday. They had a really rough start to the season, but, you're starting to see the pieces come together for the 49ers. The Lions, I feel like, are also starting to come together a bit as well. The Bengals have been really disappointing to me, and I feel bad that they're wasting Joe Burrow's outstanding season. They just can't get stops on defense. I think, and Zach Taylor has also made some really weird coaching decisions.
Oh, yeah.
For example, last week, you're playing for a field goal. Go get extra yards. Like, you had that awful wind at your stadium. Why are you going conservative there? That just didn't make any sense to me. The Bengals have been a big disappointment, at least for me. But at least for the North, it looks like it's a 2-team race between the Steelers and the Ravens right now. The Steelers have dropped a couple in a row, though they do play the Raiders today. And the Raiders, I'm telling you right now, this is going to be closer than people think. The Raiders are without Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Zamir White. They're top 2 wide receivers.
Isn't Aiden O'Connell
starting? Gardner Minshew was benched, but the Raiders are down their top 2 wide receivers and their starting running back for today's game. I hate saying it. This game is going to be closer than people think. That is just how the NFL goes. That's just how it is. The Steelers, they should win this game. And Russell Wilson is active for the first time. He'll be the backup to Justin Fields. If Fields does struggle, I could see Wilson going in there for some snaps. But still, this is a game that the Steelers at least should win. But those are some of my takeaways in the NFL these last few weeks. I still feel like it's the Chiefs to beat overall, though. The Bills, they had a great start, but they've kind of come down a little bit these last couple of weeks. But I still think the Chiefs are the team to beat at this point.
Yeah, I think with the Bills, it's going to be really interesting if James Cook continues.
Yeah.
If his numbers start to drop due to Bills numbers, start to drop because they need to rely on Josh Allen. It was a scary sight last week with Josh Allen. Apparently, it wasn't a concussion. He cleared all the tests, so there's no issue there. Also, is Joe Flacco the next Rich Hill? Is he like this veteran guy that is he this veteran guy that will help teams win? You saw what he did with Cleveland. He's crushing it with the Colts. I don't know if it's like an affinity with Baltimore type of thing, like the past, like the Baltimore Colts became the Indianapolis Colts, the Cleveland Browns became the Baltimore Ravens. So like, is he like really good when a team is connected to Baltimore in their history? Is there a correlation? I don't know, but it's interesting. I mean, but that's actually a godsend for the Colts because maybe Richardson they kind of rushed his development. So having him there, and here's the thing, and I think he might have a home with the Colts for at least next couple of years. Very smart, because here's the thing, he was run out of Cleveland by Deshaun Watson, and the irony is Joe Flacco played better before Deshaun Watson got into the NFL, and Joe Flacco's playing better right now. Like, you thought Joe Flacco's contract was bad. Even after that, like he's been solid for him. Yeah. So that it is a mess. And by the way, you want karma for the Browns? Baker Mayfield's looking pretty good for the Buccaneers. Oh yeah, by the way. Yeah, and Jameis Winston, like, look, if Jameis Winston goes to another team and it's like a 1-year starter for him and he's good, wow, the Browns really screwed up because then you have Baker, you ran Baker out of town for Deshaun Watson. That didn't work out. You brought in Joe Flacco, then ran him out of town because of Deshaun Watson. That didn't work out. If you run Jameis Winston out of town and he's better than Deshaun Watson for whatever team, it's like you got like they're just making poor quarterback decisions.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's kind of where they are with week 6 or week 7. I think we forgot about the Robert Saleh thing before we talk about the playoffs. If you honestly believe that Aaron Rodgers had nothing to do with it, I have a bridge to sell you. Because there's no way we find out, Nathaniel Hackett, Aaron Rodgers' buddy, is going to be limited in his opportunities. And then he's the one that stays, and Robert Saleh is the one that gets fired. I don't quite get it. I mean, what do you think of that whole situation?
And then Woody Johnson comes out. Yeah, I had a conversation with Aaron Rodgers the night before I fired Robert Saleh. Oh, you did now, did you? You did, huh? And that just didn't come up. You just didn't tell him that you were thinking about firing the head coach the next day. I kind of have a hard time believing that.
You don't wake up and say, oh, now I want to fire the head coach.
Yeah. Like that. I don't believe that for a second. But the Jets, they are still winning some games here. And I know that they're still talking to the Raiders about Devontae Adams. The Saints are still in there. The Steelers, Schefter said that they were talking to the Raiders on Saturday since they're in Vegas. I don't know how that's going to unfold. I still think if I had to guess, he's going to go to the Jets just because of Aaron Rodgers. But I saw the Raiders yesterday. They're like leaking it to the media. We'll just keep him. I'm like, really? You just want you're leaking this so you can get your asking price because no one wants to pay a second round pick plus to get Devontae Adams right now. So I found that situation very funny as well. But
you also have to fix the contract as well because
if you don't fix it, it's a 1-year rental. So if you fix it, you'll keep him for this year and then probably the next couple of years. You have to rework the contract if you want him not to be a rental.
Yeah, and I think what are we a month away from the trade deadline?
Yes, about a little less than a month.
Yeah, I think they kind of blown their wad a little bit by trying to facilitate a trade and making it public right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like personally, I would have waited. The Ravens almost picked off Jaden Daniels on that, but it's 4th and 6. I don't believe they're in field goal range. But yeah, so it's 2013 Baltimore. But yeah, no, I think that whole situation is going to be a bit of a mess. Obviously, you had the Romeo Dubes situation, but it seems like everything's kind of cleared up there. Look, I mean, this trade deadline can be really interesting. I mean, it's going to come down to, do teams want Christian Kirk? Do teams want Hopkins? Like, it's going to be interesting. Like, I wouldn't trade him. I wouldn't have leaked anything about it because there really isn't a lot of options this trade deadline. It's going to be really empty. I can't think of any other big name guys.
Amari Cooper?
Probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, that's going to be interesting there. And then we'll end the show with the MLB playoffs, where we have our matchup for a championship series. It is the Guardians-Yankees in the ALCS. It's the Dodgers-Mets in the NLCS. It's a lot. I think this year's, it's what, the big payrolls, the 3 biggest payrolls in the Guardians. So it is definitely. What are your thoughts on this matchup? These matchups?
I think the Yankees come into that series against the Guardians as the favorite, but I do think the Guardians have better pitching overall, and that's been the case, I think, for a while. I just think the Yankees have a lot more power, especially with
their rotation. By the way, their rotation is Rodon, Cole, Clark Schmidt, Luis Gil for the first 4 games. Okay. And I'm assuming Rodon will be there for Game 5.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I still think the Yankees, again, they have the power advantage, especially with the home run ball. Though the Guardians, especially with Ramirez, with how great he was against Detroit, he's no slouch either. And a lot of the players in their lineup are no slouch. So I still think that's going to be a fun series. But if I had to pick a winner right now, I would take the Yankees overall, just with their power. Dodgers, Mets. I mean, the Mets are they have like that team of destiny feel to them right now. They start out the season really poorly. They finish on quite a heater. They make the playoffs on the final day of the season. They take out Atlanta. They obviously, they take out, Jesus Christ. They take out the Phillies.
Atlanta been in postseason. I mean, World Series in 2021.
Yeah.
But that lost in wild card. I think they've lost pretty quickly this year. They were lost in the division series last year. I mean, they've kind of just gone backwards.
Yeah. They also need Acuna back, and they were pretty banged up. The Mets, they took out Milwaukee, which that's no surprise. The Brewers, they get in the playoffs, and then they don't really get
Every team that has played Milwaukee in the last few years in the postseason has made the World Series.
Yes. And then they play the Phillies, and they just dominated them. Like the Phillies, their bats went cold. Their pitching wasn't as strong. And now they're going up against another juggernaut. And I honestly thought the Padres were going to win that series throughout it. The Padres, they were giving the Dodgers fits. I mean, the Dodgers
had a bullpen game. Dodgers had a bullpen game that second to last game. Like,
I was laughing at them for it, but their bullpen just pitched a shutout. Like they were, all of their relievers were tremendous throughout that game. And I think the biggest thing also, Padres bats went cold those 2 games. Tatis went cold. Peralta went cold. Everyone in their lineup just couldn't buy a hit. And you saw that in Game 5. The Dodgers also get 2 home runs from their Hernandez guys. Even when in a series where I felt like Ohtani was a bit colder than normal, same with Mookie Betts, they still were able to get through because of the depth they have in their lineup, and especially with how good their bullpen is. I think the Dodgers are the favorite in this series. I think we're, at least right now, if I had to pick 2 winners, I would go Yankees-Dodgers for the World Series. And I know that's going to make a lot of people mad because I think those 2 teams are 2 of the most hated teams in baseball. I mean, I'm not high on the Dodgers either. I can't stand them. I don't like the way they run things, especially with how much money they have. But I do think they will win that series. But I think it's going to be close. The Mets, they have that Cinderella type feel to them. And, Alonso's been great. Their pitching has been solid. Their bullpen's been good. They're doing a really nice job hitting overall. And I think these 2 series here are going to be fun.
Yeah, I think, look, I think I texted you a couple things here. For me, I'm rooting for ABY, anyone but the Yankees.
Well, of course.
So, look, Guardians, but also Guardians haven't won a World Series since 1948. I actually want to see them win. I generally, for me, I can't stand the Browns, but I have no issue with the Cavaliers or the Guardians. So I have no issue rooting for a non-football Cleveland team. Also, Jose Ramirez is an underrated superstar. He is an underrated superstar. They got pitching. They got a great bullpen. So I do want to, and I do want to see them, like, at least I want to see some of these teams be successful, because you never know when the next time the Guardians will have a chance. And I mean, look, the Orioles and Astros were both eliminated in the wild card round. I mean, who knows what would have happened there? By the way, if the Orioles beat the Royals, I think they would have beaten the Yankees, because for some reason, every time they play in Yankee Stadium, which they would have done most of the time in most of the series, their offense seems to light up. But obviously, they had their issues. I don't think they're a home run or bust team. I think they are a hard hit team that majority hits home runs. So just because the results are mainly home runs, that doesn't mean the process is mainly home runs. So, by the way, they also fired their hitting coach, which, by the way, to all the fans are being happy about it, doesn't mean they're going to change their approach. In fact, it means they're going to double down on it. It just means that the guy was not communicating it properly. And maybe the guy was getting attacked on social media about it. But also, Freddie Gonzalez is not going to return as the bench coach. And then Jose Hernandez as the major league coach / translator, he's not going to return. Which is going to be really interesting if Freddie Gonzalez, who I think it's fair to say he wasn't very good in his past times as a manager. Like, I think he's been not horrifically bad, but not great at the same time. It's going to be interesting to see if he's a name for one of these jobs, and that's the reason why, if that's the reason why he's getting them, why he's leaving the Orioles. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. But no, I think Mets have the team of destiny thing. I think the Mets take down the Dodgers. It's going to be tough, but the Dodgers are starting Jack Flaherty in game 1. I think they are starting a bullpen. It's a bullpen game in game 3, and I believe it's either I think it's Buehler game 2, bullpen game in game 3, and then Yamamoto in game 4. I don't trust. I trust Yamamoto maybe a little bit. I don't know about the bullpen game situation, because that can be hit or miss. Jack Flaherty can be good, or he can be really bad. And then Walker Buehler, this isn't the same Walker Buehler as it was a few years ago. I like the Mets pitching. I like the Mets pitching and then Mark Andrews was wide open, and they're first and goal Ravens, but yeah, like, I think the Mets pitching is better. I think the Dodgers hitting is better. Mets pitching is better, and I will take the Dodgers bullpen. But because I think starting pitching is going to be key, I think the Mets win this in 6 or 7. The only question is, if they do get into a World Series and they do win, are we going to see Jose Iglesias perform his song at the end? Like, are we going to see that? And are we just going to have like a music type impact? Which, by the way, his song is actually pretty good. And by the way, his song's pretty good. And in case you want to update, Pitbull remixed that song. That's out right now.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so I think Mets. I'm hoping for Mets. I'm hoping for Guardians versus either Mets or Dodgers.
Honestly, I want a Yankees-Mets World Series. I'm sorry. Come on. Subway Series, World Series. When are we going to get that again? That'd be so cool.
It would be cool. Maybe like for me after the Orioles, after the Orioles win a World Series, and then maybe at that point. But no, I think Ravens touchdown, Derrick Henry pass, 26-13.
Okay.
So that's why I paused a little bit. But yeah, no, I think no, I'm with you. I think once the Orioles win a World Series, then I'll be cool with the Yankees winning a World Series. Just so we can say, just so Orioles fans can say that we've won a World Series since we won the World Series past 2010 before you guys did. So that's just ego points right there. Also, I do like the funny situation would be if the Mets won the World Series and then signed Juan Soto away.
Oh, that's just evil.
No, but you know what? I could see a situation. Maybe there is a situation where Juan Soto goes to the Mets and Alonso goes to the Yankees.
Nah, Juan Soto's coming home, baby. Don't even put that into the world. He's coming home.
Oh, I definitely could see it though. Like, that's the thing. I could see the Nationals. I I would have to have more evidence on that one. But
I know.
like, if you gave me like a list of 5 teams, like I'll make you happy with this one. Nationals are in that top 5. Like they
That's
are
fair. That's fair.
They are solid. They are solidly in that top 5. Like after there's Mets, Yankees, Dodgers, Nationals, and I would say maybe the Padres or Marlins.
Mm-hmm.
One of those teams. Like that's kind of where I'm looking at there. But yeah, like, that's what I think. But yeah, that's gonna be our show for today. We'll be back next week. We'll talk about the rest of these games. We kind of were doing it a little earlier because Steelers played 4, and then the Ravens were just in the second half, so this was a good time. We'll talk about the ALCS and how that working out there. But yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. We'll see y'all next week.